today we have a very special guest on the show, Jason Suntych. We got to meet a couple years ago at the Surveys Ranch at one of their schools, and he's a professional rodeo photographer with a lot of interest in athlete well-being and also animal athlete well-being as well, in addition to what he's doing with the camera in the arena. And so we're going to get into everything: red lights, blue lights, XTi.us, what that is, how that can improve your training, your recovery, and all of the above, and kind of get into the science about this, the research that they've been providing and showing on animals and how that's transitioning over into human life. Jason, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. Pleasure to see you.
I'm glad to have you.
Excited to have the opportunity to talk about what it is that we're working on.
Sorry, I lost that last part. Can you say it again?
Oh, just excited to be able to talk about what it is that we're working on. And
Yeah.
I think we've got something here that can definitely help guys, not only on the rough stock side of things, but just in general in terms of rodeo and some of the benefits we're seeing in other sports and kind of how we got here.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I cannot wait to get into it. Let's kind of jump into your background beyond XTi. You know, how you got into rodeo, how that passion for rodeo photography came about, and kind of just jump into that for a few minutes so we can get to know you a little bit.
Sure. So I was born in Laramie, Wyoming, grew up in Riverton, and went to school in Northern California, have a degree in biochemistry. And the way that I paid for that degree was doing sports photography. So I've been doing this now for about 30 years. Actually traveled the country, ended up with a sponsorship that paid for an RV for me to travel the country and do motorsports photography in college. And it's just one of those hobbies that's kind of gone awry. Still get some opportunity to shoot NFL games, IndyCar, and then obviously being from Wyoming, rodeo is something that I've always had a passion about. And so finally decided to take that a little bit more out of the hobby realm. Last year was my first permit year as a PRCA photographer, and had a lot of fun. I only had the time with this business that we're doing to shoot 2 rodeos. I shot Greeley and Cheyenne, but did manage to get a couple of covers for PSN last season, which was a lot of fun, a bunch of feature article photos. And this year, the only major rodeo that I've shot is Cheyenne because I didn't have time for Greeley, unfortunately. But managed to get a bunch of photos published again in PSN this last month. So it's just definitely a passion of mine. And, I think probably my favorite thing about shooting rodeo is just being able to hang out with people that I really can relate to. Really cool sport and good people.
Man,
I seen the one photo that I think it was the one you took of Stetson kind of made its rounds there. That was like a really, really good shot. And when Doug first talked about having you on, I was like, just typed your name in real quick, and that was the first one that came up. I was like, oh yeah, that's this guy is a photographer. Like he's the real deal. So that's insane that you've been doing it for 30 years and still call it a hobby. But man, your work is pretty awesome.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. It's one of those things that in the midst of still being in a startup business, a lot of stresses around that. And I can tell you that when you're behind the camera and just focused on, especially if you're in the arena, you're not thinking about too much else. And so it's a way to just kind of get away and do the thing that you love to do.
Man, that's cool. That's super cool. I can relate to that on many levels, man. Running a startup is quite stressful. The entire, I don't know when it stops being stressful, but it definitely has it. So having those hobbies, man, I think it's so important to do that. And whether it's photography, fitness, shooting a bow, like whatever it is, just something to get your mind off of what's going on is so important for your overall health, I think, because otherwise we just end up carrying stress constantly, right? We're always in this heightened state of just like, I have to be doing something, and having that one thing to kind of bring you back to that ground floor, that ground level, and kind of just realign yourself that's so important, man. So like hearing you say that it just all goes away when you start looking through that lens, man, that's cool. And I hope that, man, that's just a very, very great little tip for anybody out there. If you're dealing with tons of stress and you don't have hobbies, get a hobby. Hobbies are good. Hobbies help a lot.
And it's crazy. I mean, again, I do consider this to be a hobby at this point because I can't consider it to be anything else, considering the fact that I only shoot a couple of rodeos a year. Um, but, it's definitely a hobby that's given me a lot of opportunities, like I just talked about with NFL and IndyCar and those types of things. And it's just a unique access point and, again, a passion. So
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. Let's get into this other passion, which is, dude, it blows my mind because I've been reading about it a lot now, and I've been using one of your guys' red lights and blue lights and have noticed lots of changes in my recovery. So before just splurting out all the things, I just want to kind of get into the baseline of what this is, what these lights do, um, how it can help recovery. How I know you guys have done lots of studies on animals, which is then transversed into now we're testing with humans, right? You guys are working with Whoop, which I think is really cool. I wear them. I know a couple of these guys wear them as well. It's you guys are changing the game, man, and I think this is just so cool. So what is XTi? How did that all come around and get started?
yeah, so without boring you with too many details, brother and I both have degrees in biochemistry. He ended up getting an interdisciplinary master's degree at University of Wyoming, which was mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and plant physiology. And he was using laser light to listen to plants breathe, which he will tell you has no practical purpose whatsoever. But it is really where this idea was born from. Typical of a master's thesis, right?
Yeah.
What he recognized as a part of that study was that if you only gave a plant the light that it could use when it could use it, that you removed the rest of the physiological stress from the organism and you got much better growth and much better control over the plant. Not a lot of people know this, but the light from the sun, plants only use 3 to 5% of that energy to affix sugars or to grow. And the rest of that light is a stressor to the plant. So just like us, you strip us naked, put us out in the desert for a few days, we're not going to be very happy. Plants are identical. The only difference is that evolution has given plants defenses against that extra photon energy. But it requires some of that 3 to 5% that it brings in for growth to be dedicated to protection from the extra light. And so that's the basic premise of this technology. We call it PAWS, or pulsed alternating wavelength system, is that we're delivering just the photochemically available light to an organism that benefits the organism, nothing more, nothing less. And so we brought this out. I should take a step back. We also have a test measurement automation engineering company that was founded in 2001. And an example of one of the cool things we've been able to do there is we've worked with the U.S. Navy when a plane lands on an aircraft carrier and catches the cable. That's the arresting gear system. And historically, that's always been a steam-driven system. You think about Top Gun, and you can see the steam coming out of those systems on the ship. The USS Ford, the most recent version of aircraft carrier, that's all electromechanical at this point, so that they can land different weights of aircraft without putting all of the G forces on them, which makes the aircraft last longer, and it gives them more ability to land different types of aircraft. So our company designed and manufactured the 22 data acquisition cabinets that kind of control that system. So it's an interesting background between my brother and I. I spent 10 years working for large finance firms as a fixed income analyst, working with municipal bonds. And my brother had started this test measurement automation engineering company. And so you combine our two backgrounds and skill sets, I think it's really helped us to get this company to where it is at this point. But so we started doing experimentation with plants under the umbrella of the engineering firm, brought it out in 2014, did an angel round of funding. We've done 4 rounds of funding since and based here in Greeley, Colorado. After doing about 5 years of experimentation with plants and really getting a very good understanding of how that system worked, we had a just happenstance opportunity to use the same technology in poultry. And I think our thought at the time was we're all controlled by the same sun, so let's give this a shot and see what the effects are. And lo and behold, what we found is that we had a very discrete effect on poultry. In fact, not only in terms of productivity, longevity of the bird and how long they continue to lay eggs, feed conversions, and also just general behavior of the birds, which is a major issue in commercial agriculture for poultry, is keeping birds calm. There's a lot of pushback in the industry because of the dark lighting environments. And what we've proven is that they don't have to be in a dark lighting environment. They just need better light than what it is that they're receiving. So we've lit about 4.5 million commercial layers in 10 different states, and then had the next opportunity to move on to dairy cattle. We did a study with Colorado State University and also a local dairy here in Colorado, and found that we could increase milk production. We could reduce the feed intake to get that extra production, increase rumination time, and generally reduce the stress on the animal. That study, again, with CSU, then did a follow-up study with CSU on maternity, showed a lot of benefits in terms of reducing stress through the maternity process and having better outcomes for the cow and for the calf. After that, we started doing beef feedlot studies, and this was all out in Yuma and Ray, Colorado, northeast Colorado. And we've proven through numerous studies over the last 3 years that we can increase weight gain anywhere from 0.67 pounds a day to 1.04 pounds a day. When you look at hormone implants in beef these days, they're really attributed to about 0.45 pounds a day. So I think that is probably a better story in terms of large mammals and the hormone process. We can do a better job with natural hormones coming out of an animal based on its response to light than an implant in the ear. And I think all of that is very directly transferable over into human athletes and just people in general.
Dude, that is mind-boggling. I'm a little mind-blown right now. I love it. That is so cool. It makes total sense how it would transition throughout all those species, and just to see where it's come from plants to chickens to cows, and now we're testing on humans. And also, I know you guys are working with equine athletes as well. I want to dive into the human aspect of it, but let's cover the equine stuff first, and then because I know the human side I'm going to have a lot of questions about. So same thing, is it helping performance? Does it help decrease their stress, anxiety? How is that working with horses?
I think the answer to that is both. And I think that decreasing the stress and anxiety is also helping with the performance aspect. What we've seen, and we've done this in a number of performance equine animals, both including roping horses, barrel horses, quarter horse, race horses, and now we're also lighting 20 horses in Lexington, Kentucky that are thoroughbreds off of a Breeders' Cup lineage. And what I'm happy to say is that these are very accomplished people in the rodeo world that are using this for their performance animals, and they're seeing very distinct changes in animals that obviously had all of the capability in the world, but because of behavioral issues, were maybe not exhibiting that. And a lot of that was driven by anxiety and probably travel in a horse trailer and all those types of things. A good example would be a roper here in Weld County. And he had a horse that was outstanding, but would get nervous and start dragging calves, which is obviously not a preferable attribute.
Right.
And what he's come to realize is it's completely changed the behavior of that horse, where now he's just focused on the job. We're seeing a very similar response in race horses. A good example would be a quarter horse racehorse. And if you're familiar with the racing industry, you'd know that there are speed indexes given on a horse after each performance. And they're basically, I don't know what the top end of the range is, but, around 100 is extremely good. Obviously the closer you get to 0, the worse. And there was a horse that this was the first racehorse that we lit, and had the perfect pedigree, should have been performing extremely well. Well, it was finishing either last or second to last in every race, because by the time it came out of the paddock, completely washed out, covered in sweat, got out to the start gates, hard to load into the gate, and no focus on the race. So this horse started off with a speed index of 55 before we started lighting it. And I can tell you that within a month of lighting that horse, the speed index went to a 105. And that horse has not finished worse than first or second since we started lighting it.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Light is extremely important.
It is, man.
So then on the thoroughbred side and on these horses in Kentucky, this particular owner had not had a win in the last 12 months. And I actually went down and did the install about 3 months ago, and he's got a first and a second place since we installed the technology. So do I think this is all, in something that's just built into the animal and all of a sudden we're making it a superhero? No, I think a lot of this is just getting the mentality right within the animal and removing some of that anxiety and really increasing focus on what the job is. So pretty exciting to start seeing those types of results in equine.
That's really cool, man. That is beyond exciting to me. And I'm sure I'm going to get into this a little bit as well. I'm sure it's the same with humans, but I could think about like our biomarkers on the inside depend on light, obviously, for life. And so I feel like getting into the human side, we're not outside nearly enough in today's world. We're stuck inside, right? Working, doing whatever we have to for 8 hours to make money. And then all of a sudden we're not getting any light. And then our natural systems then go to shit without, like, not be saying it very correctly, but it makes sense to me that we need that light. We need something to help regulate our systems. And I think, dude, the system isn't regulated. There's so much more than, just the sleep. Your inflammation markers are going to increase. Your immune system function is going to decrease probably if we're fighting inflammation the whole time. Now we're in a constant state of stress and anxiety. It's just rolls downhill together, right? So being able to look at your lifestyle and look at maybe, an individual's lifestyle might be dealing with some kind of these things or having trouble sleeping. How much are you outside in the sunlight? Like, how much natural light are you getting? And I bet the answer is probably not a lot. It's probably very minimal per day. So that's where I try and get outside a lot. I know these guys too. Like when it's sunny in the morning, we're trying to get out and I got no shirt on. I'm drinking my coffee. I'm trying to get sunlight for 10 minutes just to get my body to get on that routine, right? That rhythm. There's some days I can't do that. And I notice big changes in how I feel and how I recover and perform in my workouts on those days. So the one thing I've really noticed with the light is it's much easier to stay in the what's the word I'm looking for? The schedule, the routine. My body is able to, I wake up earlier, man. Like I wake up on my own without my alarm now when I have it on. It's pretty cool. But I kind of just want to get into the actual science of this, man, how this is working with humans, the studies you guys have been doing with Whoop and with athletes and what it's showing.
I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes down to why this technology is so important for people. In the end, I think that most people are light malnourished. We spend 92% of our lives indoors, and we weren't programmed for that. Evolution has, over millions of years, we would get up when the sun rose, go out and do our work, whether it was hunting or gathering or whatever it was. And then when the sun went down, that was our cue to go to sleep. And all of that is a hormone-driven process based on light inputs. Then when we move indoors as a society, and then we make it even worse by having either a cell phone, a computer screen, or a TV in front of us that is predominantly emitting a blue light, it is completely contrary to circadian rhythm and hormone function. Without getting too deep into the science, I didn't even know this with the degree that I have in biochemistry. But the optic nerve goes back from your eyes. I knew that it crossed over under your brain. It's called the optic chiasm, and then goes back into the vision center of the brain. What I didn't realize is that a portion of the optic nerve at that where it crosses over actually splits off and isn't for vision at all. It goes into your hypothalamus, your pituitary, and your pineal gland for hormone creation. So imagine you remove all of the inputs of the wavelengths that we need from the sun, and you're trying to tell these different glands which hormones to produce at which time. And then you wonder why we have inflammation issues. You wonder why we have circadian rhythm issues. You wonder why we have more neurological disease than we have ever had in the history of humanity. And it's increasing on an annual basis. I truly believe that a lot of that goes back to light malnutrition.
That would make perfect sense to me, man. It'd make an absolute bunch of sense to me. And the circadian rhythm that you brought up, that just when I start thinking about that and how many people are not in that rhythm, right? They're in their own rhythm. The amount of REM, the amount of like sleep that you're going to actually recover from is going to decrease when you're not in that rhythm. And so, like you're saying, hormone function, all of these functions that our body, it needs light for. You actually, that part you just said about the optic nerve going straight to the brain and controlling where your hormones are created. I mean, that's the powerhouse of where all your hormones are made in your brain, right? So it makes total sense to me that these.
Well, that's interesting too. That almost mimics like what the response was from the plants. That like a certain amount of the light is going to protection, and so like I would almost consider that the same thing. Like if a certain amount of light that we're ingesting is going towards hormone production, like that's a very similar probably mechanism, I guess, as far as what the light is actually used for.
Yeah, absolutely. To go a little deeper again into some of the studies we've done in terms of the neurochemistry and what's happening in the brain as a result of using the lights, antidepressants, typically SSRIs or select serotonin reuptake inhibitors, their function is to keep the neurotransmitters available in your brain for as long as possible before they degrade down into their metabolites. And we've done studies with Purdue University that have shown that animals under our lighting have half of the metabolites of serotonin and dopamine as a control light or a white light, which probably most people, while they listen to this podcast, unless they're in their vehicle or somewhere else, are probably sitting under a white light. Mm-hmm. We believe that there are some very natural pathways using only visible light. We're not using ultraviolet. We're not using anything outside of the visible spectrum. But by being very specific about how we're pulsing these alternating wavelengths of light, we think that we can have some very discrete effects on neurochemistry that are beneficial to an animal. And I should also point out that this PAUSE methodology or pulsed alternating wavelength system is really key to what it is that we're doing that's different. The reason why we have over 80 patents domestically and internationally, I think, really indicates that this is not red light therapy as anybody else thinks of it. No. Red light therapy, I think, generally is a localized solution. This is a systemic solution where we're truly targeting the optic nerve to get your body on a very whole body basis to be improved. So when we say pause, best example is if I shine a bright red light at you, that goes into the retina of your eye. There are molecules called chromophores that accept that photon and give off an electron. That electron goes down your optic nerve and kind of like a camera or a CCD chip, makes your brain say, hey, I see a red light right there. But we all know if you look at a light long enough or if it's bright enough and you look away, you see a white spot. And that white spot is that simply those chromophores in your eyeball, once they've given off that electron, they change conformation. So you can keep hitting it with red all you want. It no longer has an electron to send down the optic nerve. And so you just see a white spot until naturally your body gives a new electron back to that chromophore, and then the white spot goes away, you can see red again. What we found is when that molecule is unarmed or has already shot its electron down the optic nerve, we can use a very specific alternating wavelength of light that re-energizes that molecule with a new electron. So now imagine we do this 250,000 times a second. We're driving far more information into the biology, again, using only visible light to get there, but it's giving us much more discrete control. And it's essentially, I think, in a very natural way, maximizing the potential of this whole system to drive information to the different hormonal glands that we talked about.
Dude, that's so interesting. And is this when? I guess the best part of the thing I like most about this is the fact that there's absolutely no like invasiveness to it. It's very, you don't have to get a needle. You don't have to go under a knife. This is just strictly light that can essentially change your entire system that's going on the inside. So I'm trying to think of how the best way to word this. Does it have to be a certain time? Is there specific times a day where you need the 45 minutes of light would be better than the other, right? So before bed or in the morning, or does it matter? Can I have it on all day? Like how does that all work? Is there too much light that I could get from the red light?
I think in the end, that's probably the biggest hurdle for us on working with people as opposed to working with animals. When you're working with a feedlot animal, pretty easy to dictate because that animal doesn't have other things that it's doing during the day. It's in the feedlot. And so
Yeah.
we've proven that our best results with this technology are 24-hour lighting, which I think is a good indication for people just to give kind of a safety aspect to this. It's not like you're going to overdose by using this technology. Again, our best results are with 24 hours of lighting. And that's the other crazy thing about this is I almost feel like people would take us a lot more seriously if we had a long list of side effects like a normal pharmaceutical had. We have yet to find a negative side effect. And when you say that, then you come off as a snake oil salesman. But again, the only thing that we're delivering is visible light. And therefore, your body isn't going to create hormones that are detrimental to you based on visible light inputs. I think, again, when we sit under white light, it's just not producing the hormones that we need. And the other thing that I'll say about white light versus our lights, white light puts out all the same wavelengths that we are. That's the definition of white light, is it's all of the wavelengths. We're just being very specific about the color and the timing. So, Doug, I'd say to answer your question, depending on what it is that you're driving towards, and people can go to xti.us to learn more about this, and the product is specifically the Lumen product is our human application. We have 3 different recipes or 3 different bulbs at this point. One is for sleep and recovery, the other is for performance, and the other is actually for hair growth. And we're finding some very amazing results on the hair growth side of things as well. So I think to answer your question on timing and when you should get 45 minutes, as you gave as an example, 45 minutes is really the minimum that we recommend of using the rest and recovery light, which is, to our vision, looks like a red light, even though there are multiple wavelengths within it. And I would recommend using that about 45 minutes before you are planning to go to sleep. And it's not that you can't be doing anything else while you're using the light. You don't have to stare at the light. It only needs to be at about a 45-degree angle to you, to wherever it is you're looking, and about 3 to 4 feet away from you. So you can still sit and watch TV. You can still sit and read a book. The only thing that I would recommend is that you don't have a cell phone that you're looking down as you're trying to get light into your eyes. We're learning some of this through experience of people that just aren't realizing a benefit. And I think it all comes down to understanding that everything that we're providing is going through your vision. So if you don't have the light in your peripheral vision, you're probably not going to get a benefit. Where we're seeing the benefits of the performance light, and I'll take a step back to the feedlot industry to give you some examples of where we think this can be beneficial for people. But we have recipes that are very specifically putting on lean muscle mass and bone growth. And then we also have recipes that are helping to finish cattle and help with marbling. So depending on what it is you're driving towards, for a performance athlete, marbling is probably not what you're looking for. But I think that we do have some recipes that it can help you with lean muscle mass, and we've proven that through tens of thousands of head of cattle at this point. And hopefully everybody can kind of follow along with me that in the end, we're all animals controlled by the same sun. A lot of the physiological processes are very similar. So although we don't have a litany of human trials at this point, we are headed in that direction. But we have spent $25 million and since 2014 in the R&D phase prior to commercializing this technology. So this isn't some new ad hoc idea that we have that we think might work. We are very certain that this has huge benefits, and I think that we're only scratching the surface in terms of what this technology can provide.
Man, that's so cool. I agree. I think this is just the beginning, and I think it's going to be a pretty revolutionary thing for people, animals, all of the above. And when you start talking about Western sports, people, animals, I mean, that's what Western sports are about. So we talked a little bit about how I'm going to incorporate it into like a human life. 45 minutes before bed, 45 minutes at the bare minimum for anybody to get that exposure would be very helpful. I know you said we have lots of time-dependent athletes that listen to this as well. So if we could just run through real quick how are they putting lights in trailers for them, like when they're hauling them? Are they putting them in their stalls, both? Like, how is that all working with the animals on the performance side? Like, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. We have two people that were in the NFR last year as barrel racers that are utilizing the technology, and they've got our technology installed in their home stalls. And then we also have a separate technology. It's more like a puck light that is 12 volt, and it's installed into the horse trailer above each stall in the trailer for transportation. When you look at timed event animals, that's probably the biggest stress that they have is being hauled up and down the road. It's kind of funny as I think about this. We've had a lot of success in meeting with professional and collegiate teams on the human front. And what I always kind of joke with them about is now that we have some rodeo athletes doing this, you go into a NFL training facility and they all have cold tubs and they've got saunas and they've got massages and 30 training tables lined up. And this is after every practice. And then you look at what rough stock guys are doing. You look at what timed event athletes are doing. Then you look at what their animals are doing. And then after that event, they're loaded back up into a horse trailer and on to the next show. They're not headed to the cold tub or the sauna or the massage table. I think that this technology in terms of recovery, both for the animals and the athletes, just has more promise potentially than some of the more mainstream sports like NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. Simply for the fact that all of these rough stock athletes, timed event athletes, are really left to their own devices outside of resources like yours to help them on the training aspects. And so recovery from injuries, recovery just from athletic performance in general, both for the human as well as the rodeo athletes or the animal athletes, I think this is very key and something that can significantly potentially reduce injury and increase performance.
Hell yes, dude. And the longevity just aspect to me makes so much sense. Not even with just humans. I mean, animal athletes. How many incredible animal athletes do we see go out because of an injury, because of not, and you mentioned getting hauled up and down the road. Like for bucking horses and bulls, that's the number one thing I think, that if they can either take the road or they can't. And I think a lot of that stress could be mitigated by regulating that through light. And you're talking about those little hockey puck lights. I mean, dude, even in a big hauler like full of bucking horses and bulls, you could definitely throw those in and see. I think it'd be a little bit harder to test with them, like getting actual feedback, because they're not quite so tame, right? they're not like so willing to let you just go up and mess with them. But also, that's what bucking shoots are for. That's what handling shoots are for. We definitely I think that would be a really cool thing to test out and see what would happen, and just in how they take the road. And you look at them at the end of the summer in May, these horses and bulls, they look really good. And by August and September, some of them don't look so good, just not being able to take the road and recover. And I think that'd be a really, really interesting thing to test out on rough stock animals, especially like over an entire season, where like, do these lights help animals keep the weight on, performing better, able to keep going up and down the road? Because at the end, that's the stock contractor's livelihood there. I don't know why they would not invest in that, right? Those animals are everything they've got. So to hear something like that simple, it makes total sense to me why people would want to try that, or at least give her a test out. How do you see this changing the whole Western
industry? I think that'd
game?
be extremely interesting.
Yeah, it would be.
So for me, on the performance equine side of the equation, and you can throw bulls into this as well, there are a lot of restrictions on anything that's performance enhancing, which is completely understandable. You look at, in the racehorse industry specifically, and a lot of that is for protection of the animal, and rightly so.
Absolutely.
But I think that this is something that is potentially hugely performance enhancing, but it is also 100% natural in terms of the animal is what is producing the beneficial hormones, as opposed to anything being injected into the animal. And I think the results of that are always going to be better. The other thing that I think is important to call out here is in the beef studies that we've done, we just concluded a 3,000 head feedlot study where we had 1,500 steers in test, 1,500 in control. And what we've seen so far is that the antibiotic use is about half in the test versus what it is in control, which to me is just an indicator that you have a healthier animal in general with a better immune system. I think all of that relates very directly to the rodeo industry as well, both on the human side as well as the animal side, because anytime that you're asking a system to perform at its peak on a sometimes twice daily basis, depending on if it's Cowboy Christmas or what time of year it is, the more apt you are for injury and illness and everything else to come along. And I think that's true both for the human athletes as well as the animal athletes. So I think this is just a really unique way to look at improving health in general, both for people and for the animals in rodeo.
Yep, right there with you, dude. It's a no-brainer for me. And even talking about the human aspect, the animal aspect, and then there's a lot of regulations on steroid use, growth hormone use, all of those things for animals, right? But that's definitely for their safety. I start thinking about the light, and it's all self-regulated. Like the animal itself, the person itself is regulating what is done with that light. It's not giving a pre-prescribed dose of whatever and then forced to adapt to it, right? It's your body's able to produce exactly what it needs in the amounts that it needs to prevent overgrowth, whatever it is. It's just such a no-brainer to me. And the coolest thing about this is anybody can get one of these, and it's not going to totally break you. It's not something that is, $5,000 to buy. It is very affordable, which was my biggest thing when we talked in the very beginning about all this was we want to provide our listeners, our followers with things they can use. And this is something that I think is worth so much more bang than it's what it's worth, man. It's awesome. So do we have our discount code set up yet? I don't remember if we talked about that yet.
We talked about that last week. We will have a discount code set up for you in the immediate future, as in today or tomorrow. I've got somebody working on that.
Perfect. Well, we'll definitely get that out on these next episodes. I believe it's going to be Champion Living Fitness. For anyone listening, go check out xti.us. If you have questions, I know Jason would be more than happy to answer them. Shoot him a DM. You can shoot us DMs. We can get you guys linked up. Man, I want to have you back on here again after we let this sit for a little bit, because this was so interesting and it's something I think
we could do a whole Q&A episode on this.
Absolutely. I would love to kind of put it out once it comes out and let our listeners kind of pick over what they think is they want to know more about, and we can do a deep dive on all that stuff, because this was really cool. I thoroughly enjoyed having you on today, and I think that anybody listening can take an extreme amount of value from this. And it's simple. It's easy. You're not changing anything. You're just incorporating red light or blue light into your life, and something that you're not getting enough of anyways. So my experience, like I said, I've been using this thing for about a month, maybe a little bit longer. And the red light, I'm noticing big changes in my recovery. My REM has increased. I usually get about 2.5 hours of recovery, REM sleep. I've been over 3 hours pretty much every time I use the red light. And I fall asleep with it on accident, but I have it on before I go to bed, and I usually almost fall asleep with it on every night, and I'll get up to go to the bathroom or something at 4 a.m. But it never keeps me up. Like if I have the TV on, I leave that on, it's going to wake me up a couple times throughout the night, and I'm going to notice my recovery and sleep. If that blue light is on, I'm done. My next day is not going to be good. But notice quite the opposite with the red light, which I think is, and just proof is in the pudding right there. Pretty simple to see it all.
Yeah, I think without a doubt, you brought up a couple of interesting things that I just want to throw in here at the end. Some people sleep well with these lights on all night. Other people are more sensitive to light while they sleep. For people that are sensitive to light while they sleep, I recommend putting the light on a simple electric timer where you say, hey, I want to use this for an hour. And so if you fall asleep in 30 minutes, great. The light turns off after you fall asleep. For the people that don't mind having the light on at night, even though we just talked about going down the optic nerve and why that's so important. Fact is, our eyelids are semi-translucent. If you close your eyes in a bright environment, you can sense that the lights are on or they're off, just like we're talking about sensitivity to red light while you sleep. So you are still delivering information to your brain, which I think is beneficial. So if you can sleep with the light in the room, I'd recommend that. And the other thing that I should mention is all of the university studies that we've done on mammals so far, we've shown anywhere from a 300 to a 400% increase in melatonin within the first 24 hours of use.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I always thought about melatonin historically as something that just makes you sleepy. It's it's why Grandma would say you get tired after Thanksgiving dinner was the tryptophan breaking down and you got melatonin. Well, it's not necessarily true. There are a lot of scientific studies that say that you can't increase melatonin without a dark period. We've proven that to be scientifically just non-factual. We have all of these animal studies that we've done. We're lighting 24 hours and we're spiking melatonin. So you don't have to have dark to create melatonin. And the other thing that not many people recognize about melatonin is it's anti-inflammatory and it's also anti-carcinogenic. Goes in and cleans up free radicals. So when you look at the fact that, again, and Doug, you brought up another good point in terms of your body's going to regulate its response to the light. Homeostasis is a real thing. So when you're getting the organism to create its own beneficial hormones, homeostasis kicks in. And once you have enough of that hormone, your body's not going to create more. It'll just self-regulate and stay there. So it's interesting to me that with homeostasis in mind that we're seeing a 300 to 400% increase in melatonin in all of these different studies that we've done. That to me is an indicator of our bodies need a lot more of these light inputs than we're getting. And that's why I keep going back to, it's really simple to look at it this way, but in the end, it's light malnutrition. We pay a lot of attention to what we get in terms of caloric nutrition, but we don't look at all about what we're doing on the light side of things. And I think it's incredibly important.
Right there with you, man. And just this whole episode, I think, has pointed out and brought to the surface that something that simple is a huge part of the regulation process of what goes on the inside. So you can pay attention to your caloric needs. You can do all of these things, right? You can invest all these money in supplements and everything. If you're still not getting your circadian rhythm right and setting up your sleep so you can actually recover and use all of these things that you're trying to do well for yourself, it's never going to work at the best way it can. It'll work at 50%. It'll work at 70%. It won't ever get you to where you want to be until you do the basics that are going to bring that around to you, right? And we've said this a million times. We have this saying, like, pieces of the puzzle. All of these things are pieces of that puzzle, and we don't have one piece. The puzzle looks dumb. You've got to have that one last piece, and then all of a sudden it all comes together, and you can see it, you can feel it. It's cool, man. So I think today just really brought to light that there's a lot to this process of just well-being and being healthy and an athlete that is very, very easy to regulate and take control of yourself without having to go down these huge rabbit holes, which is kind of what the world likes to do today, is just take you down as many rabbit holes as they can. And like, you're saying the snake oil shit, like that's more prevalent today than it ever has been. This is something that is simple, non-invasive, and has a ton of research on it already that's been proven to work. So anybody listening that's interested in this, is having trouble with recovery, sleep, or just want to give her a try, you can go check them out, xti.us. Look at the Lumen light. You can go on their shop. You can go onto their research pages. They have it all there posted for you, which I think is great. It's transparent. That's what I think everybody's looking for these days, is just full transparency in what's going on and what they're investing in. So check them out. I believe the lights are about, is it $299 for a bulb? Is that what I saw?
It is. And the other thing is we have a 90-day money back guarantee. So if you buy a light and you're not seeing a benefit, it's not like you're putting yourself out there and you're going to be stuck with a product that you don't like. We believe in the product so much that we're putting a 90-day guarantee on it. And I'll tell you, we have had one lamp returned, and I'm not sure what happened with this person, but we still had the seal on the box when they returned it. So that's a pretty good indication that people are seeing some benefit here.
All you got to do is try it and you'll be convinced. That's what that shows me right there. Go for it, Paul.
Yeah, I know we're going long, but I have some burning questions. So, like, with the bulbs, like, what is the application to them? Like, how are we how are we installing these? Do they go in a normal lamp stand? Like, what? Or is there a special application that they need?
Yep. So I think it depends on who's using it and where they're using it. For example, if you're a rough stock guy and you've got a truck camper and that's how you're going from rodeo to rodeo, you probably don't have the real estate to have a fancy light lamp stand that you're putting this into. So we actually can ship the product with, essentially an extension cord with an Edison screw-in base. The bulb
Okay.
is just looks like a flood lamp essentially. Has a lot of technology within it. So it's not just a flood lamp, but it has the same screw into it. And then if you go to xti.us on the Lumen page, we actually have recommended products on that you can purchase through Amazon that we know for
That's
a
so
fact
cool.
will fit the form factor of this lamp. So if you want to put it in your living room or your bedroom, you can absolutely do that.
Awesome. And then on the other question I had was with the red light and the blue light, those are both ocular interventions. With the hair regrowth one, because
Oh,
I know
yeah, I do
Logan
want to hear
wants to know
about this.
about the hair regrowth. So is that like skin application, or is that also through ocular?
Nope. Once again, it is just through the optic nerve. And it's amazing. Have we've seen a lot of benefits in a lot of different disease processes, and we have to be very cautious about making any type of medical claim. And we are very certain not to make medical claims, but we have seen huge benefits in terms of helping with symptoms in people with things like Parkinson's and MS, cystic fibrosis, and that I believe really are an indicator of where this technology can lead in the future. On the hair growth front, what we found is that we found this by accident. We have seen a lot of people who have gotten in contact with us and they're going in for haircuts more often. They're noticing that they have a little more arm hair than they used to have. And we're seeing this both on the male and the female side. Things with female pattern balding and male pattern balding, where we're definitively seeing people increase hair growth. And interestingly, again, going back to the animal analogy, we have sold a lot of lights to the show cattle industry because they are looking for that hair growth. And so, depending on, again, specifically the recipe, there is a hair growth recipe where we are seeing huge benefits.
Dude,
But again, it's coming through your eyes. It's not shining it on your scalp like the other red light therapies.
Okay. Cool.
dude, would that work for like sheep, like crops? Like that's what they're getting from a lot of those animals. Have you guys even thought about maybe trying that with those? Because I think that would be pretty interesting to see if like wool production increased or anything like that. I'm just a random thought right now, but
Yeah, we are actually in discussions with a lot of different people on different animal species. I think hogs and sheep
mm-hmm.
are very interesting. You look at hogs just in terms of temperament, I think is a big piece of that. And also seasonal infertility. If we could play a role there where, you see about 3 months out of the year where hogs are not as fertile. If we could play a role there, play a role in terms of hair growth in sheep, I think that makes a lot of sense as well. I think our biggest issue has been it's amazing. It's a blessing and a curse to have a technology that's so widely applicable because at some point you've got to really focus.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's like trying to shoot a covey of quail and you can't shoot at the covey. You got to pick one.
Yeah.
So, so that's why I think we've really made our dominant focus right now is on humans and performance equine. Those are really the areas where we see our most immediate return on the investment that we've spent since 2014 and all of the investors' money that has gone into this. And I should mention that as well. And I feel like I'm skipping around here a little bit, but we've been extremely fortunate in terms of our investor pool. And I think this is another place where this plays back into the rodeo community. is we went and tried to do the conventional route in terms of financing, went out to Silicon Valley, and there was a lot of interest, but it took my brother and I about an afternoon to recognize that that wasn't who we wanted to have as our investor pool. So we came back to Colorado, and we've raised probably 90% of the money that we've raised to date has come from individuals largely in the agriculture space here in Colorado. So it feels really good to be bringing this back into an agriculturally linked application, being rodeo sports, just kind of coming full circle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so neat. I think it's so cool. I'm really excited to see what happens with y'all's business in the years to come, and the changes that I think are going to come from this in the rodeo world, not just livestock, but the athletic side as well. I would say anybody that's going to try this, it's great to have some way to track what's going on the inside of your body, just to keep track of those trends. And I'm not saying you have to go buy a Whoop or anything, but most people have an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or something that will give them trends at least. And I think that's a really, really good way that's how I've been tracking, is with my Whoop, right? I feel better in the morning for sure, but I can look at this thing and it tells me how much my restorative sleep has increased. Dude, how, my resting heart rate, it changed a lot from it, which is wild to me. And so I've thought, if I wouldn't have been able to see that, I wouldn't have been able to put the exact numbers to it and say, damn, that's improving this for me in a big way. And I can see it over the last, 3 weeks. I've used it 4 weeks. It has continued to do that. So I think it's really important to have some kind of tracking trend options out there for you, so you can see that the things you're trying are working or not. But this is something I've had a lot of success with, and I'm excited to see what long-term use of it does for me. Like I said, it's only been a month, so we're really just kind of getting her opened up here. So, Jason, thank you so much for coming on today, man. This has been awesome. I have learned so much. We will definitely be having you guys back on to chat more about this. Again, anybody listening can check them out, xti.us. We'll have our discount code posted, but Champion Living Fitness is going to save you a little bit of money with them. And guys, I can't wait to hear the responses, the results people start getting from this, and even if it's not just with your animals, your life. There's, you talk to a barrel racer and you ask how much money they put in their horse and the supplements they buy. It's probably thousands. And we can make a lot of changes with just one light, which I think is, to me, it's a no-brainer. But Jason, we really appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much for being here today. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, how can they get a hold of
you? So at this point, we're small enough that I'm happy to have people directly email me. My email is my first name, Jason, and that's at Ziant, and that's spelled X as in X-ray, I-A-N as in November, T, and then INC, like incorporated.com. And I will be more than happy to get back with you, hopefully within 24 hours. If you shoot me an email, more than happy to answer any questions you have. And, going back again on the rodeo side of things, we do have a lot of testimonials. We're talking about the Lumen product, which is human, but we do have a Blaze product as well. That is the equine side. And we have testimonials from rodeo athletes there talking about how this has improved the performance of their animals.
Awesome. Guys, we'll get that email on our show notes as well, so you guys can check those out and get a hold of Jason if you need to. Guys, we've got to thank our sponsors real quick. Beastmaster Rodeo, been with us since day one, the premier rodeo gear company in the world. Whether you're the elite of the elite or just getting started in the sport, rough stock, timed event, stock contractor, they've got the products for you and the gear for you. Check them out, beastmasterrodeo.com. Use our discount code Champion Living Fitness, all one word in caps lock. It's going to save you 10% on all their products. And Hui Brands. Got to thank Hui Brands for keeping us rocking and rolling. We're always wearing their hats, their shirts. I know we talk about their jeans all the time, but there's no other jeans you can do a full squat in, okay? Out there, you can't. Check them out, huibrands.com. Use our discount code Champion Living, all one word. Going to save you 10% on all Hui gear. Guys, until next time, we'll catch you later.